Hi everyone, my name is Max Maniac, and today I want to talk about Jedi Fallen Order. I know I'm kind of late to the party, but I just recently finished the game and I absolutely loved it. And kind of hated it. There's so many great things about this game and also some pretty terrible things, and I want to talk about it all. Minor spoiler warning here, I know the game's been out for a few years, but if you're like me and take your sweet time getting around to playing games, you may want to save this video until after you've played it. Last chance. I'm probably not the only person who really loves this game for how unique it is in the Star Wars universe, but I did want to mention it. Not only are the characters well fleshed out, but there's also a sense of wonder and also intensity that isn't present in all of Star Wars media. Jedi Fallen Order follows the story of Cal Kestis, a Jedi Padawan who survived the Order 66 Purge, and it takes place somewhere between Episode 3 and Episode 4. Throughout the course of the game, Cal relearns some of his training, eventually becoming a Jedi Knight, and his goal is to find a map of Force-sensitive children to restore the Jedi Order. The main villains of this game are the Grand Inquisitors, specifically Trilla Siduri, who was the Padawan of one of your traveling companions in the game, Seer, who's also hunting for the map. Seer's a former Jedi, and immediately there's some rich tension there. She cut herself off from the Force after having tapped into the dark side, and she blames herself for Trilla's fall to the dark side. Trilla is a relatively sympathetic villain, which isn't new to the Star Wars universe, but characters that aren't black and white in storytelling are always appreciated. That being said, she is still a villain, and the developers did a great job at making her really menacing. She appears in several parts of the game, and her boss battle at the end is on par with the Dark Souls boss. The writers did a great job of making her feel like she could kill the player in almost every fight. Additionally, Cal, Seer, and the other supporting characters are pretty well written, with solid motivations and satisfying emotional journeys. The writing team for this game knew what they were doing and did a great job with this story, except for one bit that I'll talk about later. Something that is pretty consistent in the Star Wars games, but I always appreciate, is the opportunity to customize your character and their lightsaber. And the graphics are good enough to where you get to see those customizations all of the time, even just the small emitter of your lightsaber blade. The graphics in general for this game are pretty impressive. There's a lot of great lighting effects, the levels are amazingly well themed and artistic, and the faces of all the people are extremely expressive. You can see all of the nuanced emotions of every character's face, from Seer's raised eyebrows to express surprise or sadness, to Cal's determined look every time he faces off with an Inquisitor. On top of the well-made characters, Fallen Order is also just very fun, with lots of cool abilities, decent skill progression, and fun monster fights. I always enjoyed force-pushing stormtroopers off of a ledge, fending off a giant spider, or locking lightsabers with a boss. And Cal's emotional journey felt perfectly in line with the progression of his abilities, which can be very hard to do when it comes to game development, since the writing and engineering staff are usually separate departments. Last but not least, the music in this game is spectacular, and in my opinion is on par with John Williams' work for the other Star Wars music. A lot of original Star Wars media derives its music pretty heavily from the original movies, but Fallen Order keeps only a handful of familiar motifs, with most of the music being new, yet perfectly in line for the universe, and also for Cal's personal emotional journey. Now, as much as I loved this game, it is also really bad. Fallen Order has this very EA-like touch on the game, and if you know EA's reputation, you probably have an idea of what that means. Quick disclaimer, I did play this game on the PS4 because I don't want to spend a ton of money on the PS5 yet, so some of what I'm going to talk about here is likely related to the slow performance of the PS4, but not all of it. You'll see what I mean. To start with the minor stuff, there's just a lot of weird animations, and I'm not talking on the scale of like Mass Effect Andromeda, but they are noticeable. For example, in many cutscenes, characters' clothing clips through their body, and many characters give each other some weird looks. Every time Seer has to look at Cal from the side, her eyeballs look like they're about to burst through her head. It's also weird that whenever you customize your lightsaber on your ship, that you wave your lightsaber through a lamp over your head, but you don't cut it down. These animations aren't my major gripes with this game, and in general, they're pretty unnoticeable unless you're looking for them, but they did bug me a little, so I did want to mention it. One real issue here is that this game is just riddled with bugs. There are posts all over the subreddit of various bugs from falling through the world to Cal's head missing, and I experienced most of them myself while playing. Most of these aren't too game-breaking, but for a story-based game, they do take you out of the immersion, which lessens the value of one of the stronger points of the game. The loading times were also pretty nasty, and I understand that this was probably because I was playing on the PS4 and not the PS5 or PC, but some of the game-breaking bugs were caused by this, so you'd think there'd be some good testing for these kinds of issues since the PS4 was a major platform that this game was released for. For example, I went up an elevator to get to an area, but then realized I had gone the wrong way, so I backtracked and tried to go back down the elevator, walked through the doorway, and just fell into oblivion. The game uses elevators and crawl spaces as ways to load the next area without the player noticing, and that's a relatively common technique in game design, but they do have to work both ways. Evidently, they also didn't design a kill floor under the map either, which is an invisible game object that causes you to respawn if you do fall into the void. So I just fell for about a minute before the game was able to process that I wasn't supposed to be there. Speaking of getting lost, that's another thing I wanted to talk about. As much as I love the design and theming of this game, the actual mechanical level design is atrocious and is my biggest gripe with the game by far. Think about Skyrim's level design for a moment. That game is so broken that fans made a patch to fix the bugs themselves because Bethesda wouldn't. But almost every cave or dungeon you go into only has one entrance, and most dungeons loop you back to that entrance after you beat the boss of the area. Very simple, but very effective, and you as the player have to do almost no backtracking at all. Jedi Fallen Order's level design is kinda the opposite. Unlike Skyrim, when you beat the boss of the area in Fallen Order, you've just returned outside of the boss room, far away from your ship, and there's no fast travel feature. Some planets you visit are so weirdly stitched together, and they almost never lead you where you're supposed to go. There are too many split paths, and while many of them are valuable because you get some sort of loot in the form of customization, some of them just lead back to the primary path. But if you choose to go through the side path, you won't recognize the new path as the primary one, and end up taking another side path instead of going where you're supposed to go. One of these maps in particular, I'm positive was designed in circles. Now, there is a map you can follow, but it's also confusing. Like, instead of having a simple 2D map with different floors that you can swap through, it's a full 3-dimensional holographic map that you can spin, but it has no compass. And when you swap floors, the maps aren't transparent enough, so you just end up looking at several floors at the same time, which is completely unhelpful. Fallen Order's level design is essentially what you get when you mash great visuals with poor design. While Kashyyyk and Dathomir look fantastic, I got so lost in both of them, it's not even funny. For someone who's even less directionally savvy than I am, I don't even know how they could complete the game without watching a tutorial. It's super weird how poorly designed the levels are in this game, given how masterfully the actual things you're looking at have been crafted. Another small thing that bugged me was the difficulty. Now, I've played Dark Souls games on my stream before, and I'm a huge fan of the series, so I'm no stranger to difficult boss fights and unfair mob encounters, which Fallen Order has plenty of, but I mainly wanted to mention the dramatic differences in difficulty. Essentially, they're set up like an easy, medium, and hard mode, but it feels like easy, hard, and very hard. I played on Fallen Order's medium mode for most of the game, but when I ended up fighting some of the bosses, I resorted to the easy mode just so I could progress with the story after losing 20 plus times. That being said, easy mode was so easy that I didn't feel like I really earned the victory. And I mean, I didn't because I was on easy mode, but the game's supposed to be fun, and if I truly wanted to punish myself, I'd go play Elden Ring, which I still have not beaten as of this recording. Anyways, my point is, I really feel like there should be more of a version between easy and medium modes, because easy felt like a cinematic version more than anything else. Finally, I want to talk about the ending of Fallen Order. Again, spoiler warning, if you haven't finished the game yet, go ahead and skip to the ending of the video, and I'll see you there. Okay, so you remember how I mentioned that Cal's goal is to find this map of Force-sensitive children so he can find them and train them into becoming Jedi? Well, after defeating Trilla and escaping the Inquisitor Fortress, Cal opens up the map, and then he destroys it. After a whole game of hunting for this map, Cal just runs his lightsaber through it and destroys it, on purpose. For a little bit of context here, Cal gains a new ally close to the end of the game, Merrin, who is the last surviving Night Sister on Dathomir. Before coming aboard Cal's ship, Merrin agrees with Cal that they have to find the map to help find the children before the Empire does. But later, when she boards the ship, she starts bringing up concerns that the map could also lead the Empire to the children and put them in danger. Her concerns are valid, but they're introduced at the tail end of the game after Cal has undergone a tremendous amount of growth and has learned to trust in the hope that this map could help bring peace to the galaxy again. Now, logically, it makes sense that they would want to destroy the map to keep these kids safe, but it does go against what Cal has worked for throughout his entire journey. Out of the scope of the game, I think it's safe to say that the writers probably didn't want to force themselves into writing a story around collecting and training Force-sensitive children if they thought they might get a chance to make a sequel, which they will. That's fine. There might have been some technical or talent issues around needing to get mocap for children as well. Regardless, this choice narratively defeats the purpose of all of your efforts in the game and is made out of the blue in a cutscene out of your control. In my opinion, it is a disappointing ending to an otherwise very strongly written story. I'd rate it 3 out of 5. And that's pretty much it. I'd say all around Jedi Fallen Order is a very good game that could have been a great one with a better written ending and a little more time spent on debugging, especially for last-gen consoles. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. This is my first time doing a scripted video and my first time doing a review video, so let me know in the comments if you'd like to see more of this kind of stuff, and thanks so much for coming. See you next time.